Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Faisal. I'm an associate professor in the Department in Geomatics at the University of Guelph. I am a colleague of Sharada's and Karine's, and I'm going to be helping to facilitate today's discussion with our keynote speaker, which is Karine Gagné. She's going to be speaking today on the topic of domesticating wildness, snow leopard tourism, and evolving multi-species relationships in the Indian Himalayas. I have a few logistical things to go through, but before we begin that, I'm going to quote my favorite author and radical scholar, which is Antonio Gramsci. Uh, Antonio Gramsci once remarked, pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. And I think his words are very timely right now because we all woke up this morning to yet more conflict in the world. Unfortunately, in the geography of where Karine is going to be speaking to us today. But I really expect that Karine is going to give us a sense of where there is optimism and where there is will. So, today's talk is being sponsored by the Circle Institute. The Institute was established in February 2020 at the University of Guelph. It's referred to as the Canada-India Research Centre for Learning and Engagement. Circle aims to be an interdisciplinary nucleus in Canada for cutting-edge research on India, South Asia, and their diasporas to showcase, advocate, catalyze, and foster an equitable, respectful, and sustained exchange of knowledge between Canadian and Indian scholars on complex and emerging and unexplored topics related to sustainability and social and economic well-being. Now, while we are meeting online today, we must recognize and acknowledge land and territory. And this talk is sponsored by the University of Guelph, and this university is established on Indigenous traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people, specifically the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And I want to recognize that this place is home to many past, present, and future First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I also want to recognize the large number of global Indigenous peoples who are attending today's talk and who are either students or faculty or staff at the University of Guelph as well. Our speaker today is Dr. Karine Gagné. Karine is an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the University of Guelph. Her research work is based in the Indian Himalayas, where she studies a range of issues, including climate change, ethics of care, human-animal relations, state production, citizenship, and climate knowledge. She's the author of Caring for Glaciers, Land, Animals, and Humanity in the Himalayas, that was published by University of Washington Press in 2019. And she was actually awarded a very important prize for this book, which was the James Fisher Prize. Her work has also been published in numerous journals, including the Journal of Peasant Studies, Disasters, Current Anthropology, and Social Anthropology. I'll just tell you a little bit about the logistics for today. Karine is going to speak for about maybe 40, 43 minutes, which will give us some time at the end for questions and answers. I would ask that everyone please mute yourself. Please do not put your video on. And the Q&A will be handled by myself. So if you would like to ask a question of Karine, or perhaps you have something you would want to reflect upon, you can raise your hand by clicking on the icon at the bottom of the screen, or you can type your question or comments into the chat box anytime during the event. I'll curate those questions and then I'll read them out to Karine after she's finished speaking. We'll ask you to please respectfully keep your questions, comments brief, so that we have enough time as possible to allow Karine to address your inquiries. The event is being recorded with the hope that it will be made available later. And I want to acknowledge the fact that we have a number of students from the University of Guelph's Masters of Conservation Leadership program who have joined us to listen to Karine's talk because they're quite interested in her research. And we're going to make sure that, Karine, your talk is available to our MCL students, many of whom are from all across the planet, including India. Finally, I want to just recognize that there's going to be another speaker. I'll repeat this information at the end of today's session, but you are all invited to the next webinar, which is sponsored by Circle, with Bhagya Shri Nadamala, which is going to be on Wednesday, the 11th of June, and more information will be on the Circle website. So with that, Karine, whenever you're ready, please proceed.
Thank you so much, Faisal, for this nice introduction. And thank you, Sharada, and the people at Circle for organizing this. So I am an anthropologist, so there is a lot of ethnographic description in what I'm presenting. But if this is taking a bit longer than the time we have, I'm also available for a question if it goes beyond the hour a bit. Okay, so Padma Dalma, a woman in her early 60s, runs a homestay in Rumbak, a village located in Imis National Park in Ladakh in the Indian Himalayas. Rumbak is a hotspot for snow leopard watching. During the winter, the community receives tourists from all over the world who, guided by snow leopard spotters and naturalists, spend hours with their cameras focused on a landscape where they can catch a distant glimpse of the elusive cat. A few years ago, Padma was hosting an elderly European woman who, after years of saving money, came to Ladakh to realize her dream of seeing a snow leopard. After a few days in Rumbak, the woman eventually had a sighting of the animal, and even she recollected to Padma at night with tears streaming down her eyes. Crying and other intense emotional responses are indeed very common among tourists who see the elusive beast for the first time. Why are you crying? Asked Padma, curious. I've been waiting all my life to see a snow leopard in the wild, explained the woman. The incident left Padma puzzled. She could not comprehend why seeing a snow leopard would instill so much emotion. In fact, she has always been curious as to why people come from so many different parts of the world to see snow leopards. Why did she not experience the same profound emotion for this animal while tourists could shed tears at its mere sight? She had also witnessed on several occasions how some became emotional even when they were not able to spot this elusive creature, often dubbed the ghost of the mountain in popular accounts. This left her confused and wondering whether there was something wrong with her. One thing that Pama concedes, however, as we were discussing, is that it's surely a fascinating beast. The snow leopard, which was classified as endangered by the IUCN until 2017, when it was reclassified as vulnerable, much to the chagrin of some scientists, is renowned for being a notoriously elusive animal, not commonly seen even among the Himalayan inhabitants who live in its habitat. Like many, Padma clearly remembers the first time she saw a snow leopard in her life. When she was around 20 years old, she was in the mountain with another woman, along with their flock of sheep and goats. Then a snow leopard came, took a goat of an average size with its tail, and threw it on its back to carry it, and I'm quoting her, as a human would carry a heavy bag or someone on their back. She remembers being stunned by the animal's agility with its tail. As she recalls this sighting, the emotion is palpable as she gazed towards the mountain where the scene unfolded nearly 4 decades ago. Snow leopard tourism in the Indian Himalaya has developed over the past 2 decades, booming particularly in the last 5 years, and attracts wildlife enthusiasts and photographers, both amateurs and professional, from all over the world. It is an enterprise that leverages the mystique of an animal that has gained in popular media a spiritual outlook through accounts of inner journeys such as Peter Madison's famous novel The Snow Leopard, as well as wildlife documentaries like The Velvet Queen. Nurtured by these popular narrative and wildlife documentary that emphasizes the animal's elusive nature, Tourists arrive in the Himalayas with affective disposition that often makes snow leopard sighting a highly emotional experience. But for Padma Dharma, like for other inhabitants of the high Himalayas, the snow leopard has long been a nuisance, a predator that regularly makes devastating attacks on domesticated animals. And it has long been treated accordingly, with retaliatory killing and derogatory terms more than fascination. For residents of the Indian Himalayas, a snow leopard sighting is a rather rare event, yet the animal is quite present in the collective imaginary. People hear stories of predation when they happen because the news of such incident usually travels very fast in the villages. But more than fascination, people in villages of Ladakh and Spiti often experience intense fright when they encounter a snow leopard for the first time. As Norbu, a man from Kibar in Spiti, puts it, in reference to the time before the snow leopard was at the center of winter tourism, it was an animal we would hear by name from our elders, but sightings were so uncommon that when we would finally encounter one, we would be scared. Lobsang Yangchen experience illustrate this well. Coming from the village of Losar in Spiti, where snow leopards are rarely seen, she moved to Kibar after getting married. Kibar is the primary location for snow leopard sighting in the region, as the village is flanked by an immense gorge that serves as their territory. She vividly remembers her first encounter with a snow leopard, and she recalled the experience with deep emotion. It happened 7 years ago when she was tending to the yaks in the pastures. Suddenly, she saw a snow leopard descending from the mountain towards her. There was a man not too far in the pasture, and feeling terrified, she called out to him with all her might, but he could not hear her. Overwhelmed with fear, she went to hide behind a rock. And while encounters with a snow leopard sometimes remain a frightening experience, today the animal is also the subject of much curiosity. In Ladakh and Spiti, when someone spots the animal roaming around the village or the pasture, a chain of phone call and text message will soon follow to alert spotters, neighbors, and family members, something that often leads to the gathering of interested viewers. Chizin, a woman from Tashigang in Spiti, summarizes well how tourism has shifted the interest for the elusive cat. Before tourism, we didn't have any interest in seeing snow leopards, she explains, continuing, but nowadays there is an interest, so people keep an eye for that. Witnessing the emotional reactions of visitor to tourism development, Padma, who I introduced in the beginning, began to cultivate an interest in the animal and took it upon herself to learn more about it. She takes a keen interest in listening to tourists recollecting their stories of sighting. Tour operators and tourists sometimes leave snow leopards related books in her homestay, and she takes the time to look at the images. When a sighting takes place near her home, she sometimes indulges in a break from her busy work at home to have a look. Padma's newfound interest in the snow leopard, which a man from Rumbak once described to me as our gold, is however not solely due to its economic significance, as a purely utilitarian analysis might suggest. It's also anchored in changing feelings for an animal that, owing to a flourishing niche tourism, shifted from a wild and distant predator into an increasingly familiar, accessible, and intriguing one. So how does snow leopard tourism reshape multi-species relationship? So in this presentation, I demonstrate how the growth of snow leopard tourism relies on the evolving relationship between local communities and the endangered animal, which has become a stable source of income. With tourism and the steady decline of the local pastoral economy, the perception of the snow leopard as a subject of interest and curiosity among local residents is increasingly replacing that of a nuisance and a threatening predator. So here I examine the changing multi-species relationship involved in this tourism, from the development of expertise in spotting the notoriously elusive animal to the emotion generated by these encounters. So this presentation builds on research conducted in the region of Ladakh in North India, where I have been doing research since the past 15 years. and Spiti, which is a new field site to me. And in this video, we can see women from Ladakh looking at a spotting scope when there is a snow leopard sighting. So these two places have become hotspots for snow leopard watching. It's based on a total of 58 interviews conducted with tourists, spotters, and individuals residing in or around villages where snow leopard tourism takes place. It also builds on hours of participant observation and informal conversation during ongoing fieldwork since 2021. Fieldwork and interviews were conducted by myself and my research assistant, Tenzin Nobu and Jigmet Lundub, and by my MA student, Nigel Marimutu. The pictures I'm showing today are of myself and Jigmet Lundub. Okay, so to understand the changing perception of snow leopard among Himalayans community requires looking at the past. And a place to look for this is hunting, which was quite common in the Indian Himalayas during the colonial era and was done for personal gain or bounty. So in his book, The Snow Leopard and the Goat, Shafkat Hussain notes that there was a consistent flow of snow leopard pelt available for Western Europe market during the early 20th century. The primary sources of these pelts were big game hunters and commercial trappers who cured the skins for European buyers, particularly from regions in Tibet and India. So in British India, local hunting guides known as shikaris were responsible for trapping snow leopards and preparing the pelts for sportsmen or game hunters, or tourists visiting Srinagar in Kashmir. It appears that this trade was, however, not organized systematically and that the overall quantity of pelt traded was relatively small. In the case of India, it seems like the trade in snow leopard pelt largely targeted outside market. And also it seems that, like in Ladakh, wearing clothes lined with snow leopard pelt was never done as it was in other parts of the Himalaya. But more research is needed to confirm this. And also, I need to mention that what I'm presenting here is like fresh out of the oven. So there's still things that I'm working on. So available information in published books suggests that Ladakh and Spiti were never as popular as Kashmir among game hunters. So interviews conducted with elders did not lead to much information as to how the local hunters were participating in this economy. But according to Punsat Namyal from Kibar, who was age 84 years old at the time of the interview, local hunters would sometimes sell animal skins, but it's not clear whether this was part of an organized business or if the pelts were sold only sporadically to outsiders. So generally, the pelts would not be strictly snow leopards one, but would also include other wild animals such as ibex pelt. And according to the same man, people in Kiba were not accompanying foreign hunters, game hunters, as local hunting guides, as it was the case in other parts of the Himalaya. But hunting was practiced, and it seems like most villages had their hunters. And there's even like, for instance, this is a cave near in Kibar village, which has the name of a very famous hunter. But retaliatory killing, however, used to be a common practice in the Indian Himalaya before the enactment of wildlife protection law in the 70s. So retaliatory killing would take place when a snow leopard would kill the domesticated animal. It could be sheep, goats, cow, horses, or baby donkeys. And a snow leopard attack can make a lot of damage. For instance, if the cat enters a pen, it can kill in a single strike a dozen of sheep and goats. And when a snow leopard was killed, it was killed by the local villagers. It would be through stoning, beating with a stick, or the animal would be shot with a powder gun. And as a mean to prevent attacks, snow leopards would also sometimes be killed if they were seen roaming around the village. And essentially, snow leopards were considered vermin. Tsewang Nobu, who's age 54 years old from Ule village in Ladakh, recalls his grandfather telling stories about how the killing of predator like wolves or snow leopard would often be an occasion to celebrate with chang, which is the local beer. Retaliatory killing seems to have persisted, probably not wide in scale, for many years, even after the introduction of the legislation that renders such act illegal and severely punishable. In fact, when I was doing fieldwork in Ladakh in 2013, a woman from Ang village had lost a few weeks before my arrival 9 sheep and goats and 1 ox calf to a snow leopard attack. And she had managed to trap the animal in her shed. And it's only because, as she explained, it was an auspicious day on the Tibetan calendar that she was able to convince the men of the village not to kill the animal. And if you wonder how it's even possible to trap a snow leopard, this was, according to the elderly woman, a very easy task as the beast was drunk on blood. So this is a belief that people have that after attacking multiple prey, the snow leopard really it tends to be a bit in a sluggish state. And there is the belief that this is due because of the animal is being intoxicated by the consumption of excessive blood. So this is usually how retaliatory killing is quite easy. So overall, this does not appear to be an isolated incident. We have collected similar stories in both Ladakh and Spiti. And the factor that seemed to in part inhibit people from killing the snow leopard for a long time in this account is the awareness that should the forest guard or the wildlife department become aware of it, they would face severe punishment. But I will get back to this. It also used to be common practice to steal the kill of a snow leopard, something that has become very prohibited with wildlife protection rules. A snow leopard typically does not consume its kill entirely in one sitting. Instead, it may roam and return to its kill multiple times. And for Himalayan villagers, this provide an easy access to meat without the effort of hunting. And it also outweigh the risk of associated with the more traceable act of hunting when it's illegal, in fact. So while this practice seems to have diminished today, accounts collected also indicate that it persisted for some time, even after the new legislation. And many interlocutors describe this behavior as simple greed for meat, as they would put it. But another man, Sewang Nolbu from Ule, again, offers another perspective on this practice. He's explaining that when a kill was brought to the village, people made sure that not even a drop of blood was spilled and that not a piece of meat was left for the snow leopard. And as he explains, once they get used to it, that is killing easily accessible prey in the vicinity of the village, they would often come back to the village and kill more animal. But finally, the derogatory terms that people in Ladakh would use to refer to the snow leopard in the past is testimony really of an antagonistic relationship. We've collected a lot of these terms, but basically the snow leopard was in the past like referred by all of this language, like one was marangmo, which refers to woman in a village who's like described as woman of a foolish behavior. Another one is langchat. They would say like you look like a langchat, which refers to a piece of cloth used in the old time to patch or repair a torn or damaged woolen dress. Another one is they would say to the snow leopard son chachas, which refers to it's like wishing that you will die while walking all of a sudden, right? Another one is shrubuchas, which is it's wishing to like for the animal to run out of energy, but it's also something that describes if you have like the skin is peeling away like from your bone, let's say like you burn your fingers, then this is something that they would also wish to the snow leopard. Another one is subjaskansok, which refers to you look like a stuffed animal. And I'll refer back to this stuffed animal. And then finally, like they would sometimes wish directly that someone could come to the village and can kill the snow leopard directly because people were no longer allowed to do this. Yes, I'll come back to these stuffed animals very soon, but more than the sporadic retaliatory killing done by local communities, what led to the massive decimation of the snow leopard population in the Indian Himalaya is the killing done by the military personnel. Widespread wildlife hunting, particularly by the military, led to a significant habitat destruction, the near extinction of several of India's notable wildlife species, including the snow leopards. Ladakh and Spiti are considered border areas in India, and both regions have a lot of military personnel posted. And for a long time also, the SSB, which is a paramilitary force in India, which guards the border of India, was touring the villages to train villagers and using guns in case there would be like an attack by neighboring country, that is Pakistan or China. And some older interlocutor remember how during this training, like the whole place would become a real hunting ground. And the new rule regarding wildlife protection did not, however, change the prevailing behavior overnight, as I suggested. Even like recently, retaliatory killing was still considered by some. In Kiber and Spiti, I was told of account like this of a man who killed a snow leopard as a retaliatory measure, and he had like the wildlife guard like coming, well, the forest guard in that state coming to his place and searching for the snow leopard like skin. So people started to be very scared of that. Even in Kiba, people remember a collective fear when people are started to throw away their guns because they really feared that they would be punished or accused of doing something. All of this new fear is really well illustrated by the discomfort with which people in Ladakh and Spiti discuss animal taxidermy, like we can see on the picture here. So in both regions, a few taxidermied animal or stuffed animal are on display in monasteries. The rationale for this practice is not entirely clear to me. We can talk about this after I collected more information. But even to the people who are in the village, it's not entirely clear to them why this was done before. But usually you would have like this animal would be placed in the monastery. And there's a lot of like cases like this over the years. I collected examples of, it's not only the snow leopard, but there's also other animals that are on display like this. But what is interesting here is that how these animals are increasingly being removed from where they are. An example of this would be the snow leopard in Tiangar in Ladakh. About 40 years ago, the animal stood outside the main entrance of the monastery. And it said at that time that the villager had decided to kill the leopard because it was preying on the livestock. One day they gathered to drive the animal away. And one villagers would have like hit the head of the animal with a stone. The animal died. They skinned the animal. They buried the body, but they stuffed the animal. They placed it in the monastery. But 10 years ago, they did renovation in the monastery. They shifted the snow leopard in the kitchen of the monastery, and it's not entirely clear, but it vanished. And also in Spiti, the snow leopard, which was on display there, the first one on the left that we see in the picture, it was asked by the forest department to the villagers of Kumik village that they remove the snow leopard and they hide this. There's different reason for this, according to the villagers, but there's this idea that people should not be seen as people who are killing animal that are endangered. So this is an example of this. But also there is certainly, arguably, the reframing of practices related to the treatment of animal may play a role in sort of the unease of my interlocutor when discussing derogatory term, hunting, retaliatory killing, and all of these material artifact like the taxidermied animal. And this could be due as well to the prevailing discourse by Buddhist leaders that some practices that are performed by Buddhists should be erased. We can think of the call in 2006 of the 14th Dalai Lama to for Tibetan to cease wearing clothes lined with animal skin, including snow leopard skin, and this led to the massive destruction of pelts. So it could be an example of this, but overall, these interventions have the effect of producing new subjects who do not engage in harmful behavior with animals. And also, I will skip this one. I'm jumping now to tourism to explain some of these new behavior. In the interest of time, I'm brushing a very quick picture here to describe how this business has developed independently in both Ladakh and Spiti in the Indian Himalayas. So in Spiti, this tourism started around 2010. In Ladakh, it would be more roughly 20 years ago. So the development of snow leopard watching tourism is in both regions goes hands in hands with conservation efforts. In Ladakh, the tourism first started to develop in Imis National Park. And over the years, various organizations have endeavored to ensure that villagers within the park share some of the benefits of conserving vulnerable species. In Ladakh, there was first the Himalayan Homestay Program, which was initiated in 2000 with the financial support of the Mountain Institute of the UNESCO. Its objective was to involve villagers in tourism initiative that are advantageous for both local communities and snow leopard. So locally, the program involved the Department of Wildlife Protection and the Snow Leopard Conservancy of India Trust. And they contributed to the training of participants in the fundamentals of hospitality, and they provided essential items such as blanket, plates, silverware, and other necessary supplies so that they could accommodate guests who were visiting. And there was also this system that developed that to make sure that everybody benefits. So there is a rotational system. So each homestay will, if tourists are coming to the village, like it's turn-wise, right? Like you will host this group of tourists, and now the following day it's going to be your neighbor, and so on and so forth. And then also in the past decades, and a bit more past decades, sorry, also snow leopard lodge have opened here and there in Ladakh. This is the village of Kibar in Spiti, where a system of homestay has also developed, but it was not like it didn't receive the same support like from the same organization, but still villagers have organized these various homestays. And there's none of these large lodge like the ones developing in Ladakh in Spiti. So the literature on the development of snow leopard watching tourism tends to focus on how it aligns with ecotourism as it involves local community through homestay infrastructure. The financial benefit that communities earn from this new opportunity is generally presented as the only incentive for snow leopard conservation. But what remains underexplored, I argue, are the feelings and emotion in which this evolving relationship with the snow leopard is enmeshed. With this project, what I'm doing is that I'm exploring the concept of domestication to illuminate the effective dimension of snow leopard tourism in the Indian Himalaya and its transformative effect on some residents in areas where this industry is thriving. Domestication refers to the process of domesticating or the state of being domesticated. To domesticate means to cause a wild animal to be able to live or work with human, and it generally describes the human influence over the reproduction, habitat, and behavior of an entire species. Anthropologists have, however, shown that the wild domesticated binary requires nuances when subject to cross-cultural analysis. But here I do not focus on local interpretation of wild versus domesticated animal and whether a shift has occurred with snow leopard tourism. What I'm taking the idea of domestication as a heuristic device, and I'm building on the work of anthropologists and social scientists who are thinking through an analytical framework that reveals the reciprocal influence of the domestication process. So specifically, they highlight how non-human species also play a role in shaping human behavior, history, and environment. In other words, domestication is a two-way street. And what I'm interested in this presentation is how humans are transformed by the snow leopard amidst the development of a niche tourism that focuses on this elusive animal. Domestication is generally defined by control and mastery. And according to ethologist Vinciane Després, it may be due to our lack of a solid theory of attachment that we think of domestication as mastery. And she proposes considering alternative concepts to domestication and suggests thinking through the idea of attunement between human and animals. So whether the snow leopard itself is transformed in the process is not a journey on which I'm embarking here, but we can discuss this later because the snow leopard spotters have their ideas about that. And okay, so this is another image of a snow leopard watching. But a crucial place to understand the attunement between local resident and the snow leopard is in the development of an expertise at tracking the animal. So as mentioned, the snow leopard is notoriously difficult to see, earning the name of the ghost of the mountain. And the snow leopard camouflages perfectly well in the rocky landscape where it roams. Snow leopard spotting is a craft that developed because of the need brought by tourism. In both Ladakh and Spiti, the first dedicated spotters were initially trained through interaction with wildlife biologists, working with NGOs such as the Snow Leopard Conservancy Trust or the Nature Conservation Foundation in Spiti. And these men would know well the territory surrounding their village and would sometimes be hired as helpers and porters by biologists on their expedition. And in following biologists, eventually these men learn about the techniques of spotting and to use the equipment to spot. And another were hired and trained directly by NGOs to monitor the snow leopard population around their village. Of course, in village, you would always have some individuals who have always been better than others at spotting wildlife due to a keen interest or because of the skills they develop while keeping a watch for predators when spending long days in the pasture with sheep and goat. And then here, Tsewang Nobu, a famous spotter, is, oh, I'm going to shift that. So you have these spotters here. I'm going to shift to a video very soon. So these spotters initially played a central role in the development of snow leopard tourism by allowing their skills, through their skills, visitors to get a glimpse at the elusive cat. So they continue to play this role today, and they also train younger generation. So for this project, we interviewed thus far 7 spotters ranging from 24 to 67 years old, and who have been between a few years to more than 2 decades of experience at spotting. Yes, here is Sewang Nobu, a famous spotter, who is explaining the behavior of the snow leopard with his cat, and he's explaining that he's doing this like his father was explaining to him when he was younger. And all the spotters that we interviewed for this project agree on one thing. To be a good spotter requires patience and perseverance. But first and foremost, you need calmness, a quiet mind, and passion. The art of spotting snow leopard involves a mix of skills and intuition. A spotter will typically start his day early in the morning, around 6:30 a.m. or 7, when the snow leopard is active at preying. Spotter will observe through the day without missing the time before dawn when the animal are the most active again. And to become an accomplished spotter, having an interest in the animal is fundamental, but not enough. One must know the surrounding area very well and understand the snow leopard's territory. A good spotter will know the snow leopard's territory and the path it follows during the day and at what time of the day it's moving around. And as much as possible, you must know in which area the snow leopard is, whether it has crossed the pass or not, whether it went towards the marshland, and so on. And it also helps to be able to distinguish between the individuals roaming around the area, but this is really not something easy. And you also must understand by looking at its behavior whether the snow leopard is hungry or not. And when prolonged period without sighting occur, spotters strategically plan their next move, often deciding to explore new areas or on previous experience of encounter. So those are some of the cues that snow leopards spotters are following. A good spotter must constantly stay alert, and with good observation and understanding of the animal's movement, it's sometimes possible to predict when a snow leopard and where it might reappear. As Tsewang Nobu explains, the most important thing is that you must understand the behavior of the snow leopard, where they live, how they eat, how they attack wildlife, and their timing for hunting. He also emphasizes the importance of learning the methods, which includes the observation using binocular and the scope. So in following the prey, one can also find the snow leopard because you have to understand how the snow leopard is hunting. So a snow leopard keenly observes its prey, usually waiting patiently in cover until an opportunity arises. And after successfully capturing their prey, snow leopard rest for about 10-15 minutes to recover from the exertion before starting to consume their meal. And this is a perfect time to bring the tourist for observation, as once there is a kill, the snow leopard will stay in the surrounding for some time and even return to consume the flesh time and again in the following hours and day. So snow leopard spotters have different technique. It involves following the pug mark like this, but also sometimes when they see the pug mark, they will like note the direction. Another thing which helps is to trace the scratch mark that snow leopards are doing like this, or the scent mark when they are spraying on the rocks and then smelling sorry, I'm trying to put the video here. It doesn't seem, oh yes, it's working. So you can see a spotter here like showing how he's doing his work. Yes, but also spotters will agree that to spot one must also follow their intuition. Some days, Wang feels a strong sense that he may spot a snow leopard, and occasionally his instincts are rewarded. Spotters are well aware that the experience of tourists who have come from all over the world, often spending a lot of money, depends a great deal on their effort and their expertise. Yet some spotters believe that there is a limit to what their expertise can offer. For Wang, if some tourists cannot see the snow leopard, it's simply a question of karma. Some tourists don't have a good karma, he explains. So by the time a spotter locates a snow leopard, the tourist may come to the site and they are not able to get a glimpse at the animal, which might be gone. So it really is something, it's an activity that has sort of like morphed into the local spirituality. Snow leopard spotters come to their craft for different reasons, including the desire to earn money. But no matter the reason, to be a good snow leopard spotter, one must be passionate about the animal. According to Sociology, those who don't have it don't do it from their heart, without passion, they simply don't last. Spotting a snow leopard is a bit like finding a needle in a haystack and spending hours and hours scrutinizing the horizon with binoculars or a spotting scope requires tremendous endurance and perseverance. It's also painful for the eyes to scan with these instruments for extended period of time. So overall, spotters have trained themselves and developed an expertise and a kind of familiarity with the animal. And when a sighting occurs, it's generally an event that brings overwhelming feeling of joy for a spotter. But the interest in the snow leopard extend beyond just the spotter. When someone spots a snow leopard, whether while heading to the pasture or in the vicinity of the village, it's common practice to inform local spotters. And this is often done with great enthusiasm. More than 10 years ago, when I was conducting research for my PhD near Ule in Ladakh, there was a genuine frenzy when a snow leopard roamed the area, making several attacks on domesticated animals over the course of many days. The situation really created a mix of fear as people remain on high alert and they were carefully monitoring their animals in their pen throughout the night. But there was also like this feeling of intrigue. People's cell phone would ring quickly every time somebody would spot the animal and then they would send pictures. Yes, so while the fear for the animal still prevails, there is a clear broadening of the register of emotion generated by the sight of a snow leopard, as Muruptsewan explained. There was a time in the village when everybody would say that the snow leopard is bad, that it's not nice, and then they would use some ugly words against the snow leopard. But now, with time change, things change, and the source of income from the snow leopard started coming. More and more tourists are now coming, and so the attitude has just become the opposite. So everybody started appreciating snow leopards, seeing snow leopard and all this. Often many people in the village tell, if you find a snow leopard, please let us know. We want to see the snow leopard. We want to take picture. Or in the word of Paldan Tunduk from Kibar village, there was a time when we would go around, and if it was an area where the snow leopard is, we would put a bell on the horse to scare the snow leopard, and we would throw stone and shout to have the snow leopard run away. Now there is nobody to do this because there are many people coming to see the snow leopard. close encounter with snow leopard continued to instill fearful emotion, but today the animal is no longer primarily wrapped in negative emotion. This is well captured by the experience of Sonam Lobsang from Kiba, who is 24 years old and starting to train as a snow leopard spotter. His first encounter with a snow leopard took place when he was young and was a very frightful one. But this encounter also led him to cultivate an interest in the animal. He's explaining the first time I saw a snow leopard when I was studying 7th or 8th standard, when the neighbor told me to go get the meat of the sheep the neighbor would have seen the kill, and he asked him to take the meat. Then we could not find the meat. We could see that the dead body had been carried by the snow leopard and the body was hiding in a cliff. I followed the trail, and then there was about 2-3 meter gap between me and the snow leopard, and I got so scared that I ran away, and the snow leopard ran away as well. I was 14, 15 years old at that time. After that, whenever I would go to the jungle, which means the pasture, I was curious to see the snow leopard. But that first time I thought, I'm dead today. I was scared. Those were the time when there was no wildlife tourists, and then slowly that tourism started. Today, Sonam Lobsang is an emerging spotter and he appreciates each snow leopard sighting. He describes one of these encounters quite poetically. One time I went toward Gagné side for scanning, and it was snowing a bit, and I saw the snow leopard coming. And the way the snow leopard was coming, not fully clear, in the snow, that was the best moment in my life. I was just standing there. The snow leopard was coming towards me and moving slowly, looking at me, and went on the side, and I was looking at him. We had a eye contact. Later, he explains how he really likes photography and taking pictures, and he would love to capture the magic. He would have loved to capture that magic moment. Over the years, Lobsang's feeling for the snow leopard grew from raw fear to fascination. Oops, and I'm concluding here. So I have thus far suggested that the emergence of snow leopard tourism in the Indian Himalaya is reshaping the relationship between human and snow leopard by transforming the animal from a feared predator into a valued and familiar presence within local communities. As tourism grows and the pastoral economy declines, local perception of the snow leopard shifts, driven not only by economic incentive, but also by evolving emotion and curiosity. But I would like to conclude with a reflection on a tension that is, however, emerging today with the changing economy in the villages of the Indian Himalaya. There has been, in the past 2 decades, an important decline in the pastoral activities in the villages of Ladakh and Spiti, in particular when it comes to keeping sheep and goats. There are several reasons for that, and the main one is the lack of workforce available, with younger generations studying outside or taking paid employment in cities. There is also a general lack of interest among younger generation for agro-pastoral activities, something that concerns older generation. When youth are going to the pasture with the sheep and goats, they don't have an interest, and they look at their phone instead of looking at the snow leopard, lamented a man following an attack in Kiba. And this is how attack happens. Tsewang Nobu sees a connection between changing attitude and the well-being of the snow leopard. According to the spotter, there was once a strong interconnection between human and wildlife in the region. In his view, the only way to protect snow leopard is to maintain domesticated animals, particularly sheep and goats. As he explains, if you keep sheep and goats, even if the snow leopard gets a chance to eat just one sheep a year, this is how we, human, benefit the wildlife, particularly snow leopard. This is especially important, he believes, for older snow leopards who rely on domesticated animal as a source of food. However, he argues that this interconnection between human and human and wildlife has been broken, and as a result, snow leopards no longer live as long as they did. And for the few who continue to keep sheep and goats against all odds, the snow leopard remains a threat rather than a subject of fascination. While those who lose animal to snow leopard attack generally tend to view this in the term described by Tsewang Nobu, such incidents often mark a turning point, prompting farmers to sell their livestock and put an end to their pastoral activity. Moreover, from the wisdom of their old age, elders sometimes view snow leopard tourism with concern. As Paldan Tumdup from Kiba puts it, reflecting on how the younger generation place all their faith in this new economy while losing interest in farming and pastoralism, you never know whether the snow leopard might stay or leave. This is an emerging concern in Kiber Spiti as a military camp is being built right in what is known as the Snow Leopard Corridor, despite the community's effort to oppose the project. That's it. I will stop sharing the screen. Yes.
Thank you so much, Karine. That was absolutely fascinating.